You. What did we learn yesterday? Let's talk about the anatomy of an HTML element. Here's an HTML element. What's the P part? Tags everything between the two angle brackets, right? This is a tag too. This is a closing tag. Just the P is the element name, right? It's a paragraph. What about class and ID? What are those? Attributes. And greeting and main are their values. What about hello world? What do we call that? The contents, yeah. So we learned how to grab elements using each of those components. Using CSS selector syntax, we used it primarily for grabbing them in JavaScript, but the same is used to target elements in CSS. We learned how to target by element name. So what selector would I use? What would I put inside the string that's passed to query selector if I wanted to select this element by its element name? Just P, right? Piece of cake. What if we wanted to do it by ID? Yeah, hash or pound main. Ooh, what if by the, yeah.
What's the difference between using query selector and using get element by ID?
The main difference is get element by ID, you can only do it by ID. With query selector, you can use any CSS selector.
Because when I was trying to do the thing with the changing the header,
Yeah.
I could get the query selector's dot value attribute, which would give me that thing inside the text box. But if I tried doing get element by ID, there wasn't any value.
Also, well, another difference is if you do get element by ID, it is just the ID, no hash in front of it. You pass just the ID. So it would just be main, not hash main. So as far as how they're used, that's the only difference. But once you have the element, if the element has a value attribute, it shouldn't be any different. So there was probably something else going on. Yeah. But the query selector is a lot more flexible. So most of the time we use that because most of the time we don't throw IDs on things unless we need to. If we can avoid changing the markup, if we can grab something without changing the markup and adding more attributes, then that's what we do. And we are out of chairs. How did that happen?
Did we get ahead of person?
No, I don't see. I don't know. Count real quick. So what if we wanted to do it by name and ID? By the combination of the element name and the ID? P hash, right. P hash main. What about by class name? P, or just dot greeting if it's by just the class name. If it's by the combination of the element name and the class name, then yeah, P dot greeting. We learned a little bit about DOM manipulation. Not a whole lot, but we use text content, right, to change and retrieve the value of the contents of an element. So, okay, we learned about the selectors. Now, what about actually using those selectors to grab something? What if we want to select all matching elements? What method do we use? Query selector all. And just pass it the selector as a string. To select one matching element, just query selector. To get the element contents, dot text content. And we can use that to get and set. Today we're going to do some additional DOM manipulation. We're going to use inner HTML to do some stuff. We're going to learn some new ES6 plus syntax for some things. We're going to dig into functions a bit more than yesterday, different ways to create them and what effect it has. A little more about scope and how they're scoped inside functions and other blocks. This will also lead us to the difference between const, let, and var in more detail. We're going to learn more about JavaScript objects, which are the things that if you got stuck on anything in the prereqs, it was probably something to do with objects because they're a little bit more complicated. Any questions about that so far? We're going to go through the homework here in a second. Good?